Now, what's so fascinating to me is the number one type of marriage in the United States is called serial polygamy. Most Americans will be serial polygamists in their lifetime. Anyone want to take a guess at what a serial polygamist is?
Is it somebody who marries both men and women?
Oh, no, but that's interesting.
Is that, are you talking about whenever people get married and divorced and remarried?
Correct. Very good. So they're married to multiple spouses over their lifetime, but only one at a time. So after the first marriage terminates, then they get another one. If that marriage terminates, they get another one. That's called a serial polygamist, even though they're monogamous during each of those different spouses while they're married to the one.
Why aren't
And
they called serial monogamists?
because they're actually married to multiple different people.
So is that like going under the assumption that like you can't get divorced once you're married?
No, it's just the term. I mean, we could talk about that from a biblical perspective. Um, and I think we do in my ethics class. We get into divorce, remarriage, marriage, who can marry, all those sorts of things. And we're welcome to do that here. But when we look at the biblical guidelines for marriage, back to the New Testament, um, we do have an injunction for elders or deacons that they are to be the husband of one wife. And but to me, that just shows that polygamy was an acceptable concept or practice because it's saying these specialized church officers or roles have an extra injunction put upon them, which to me implies or infers that the other people did not. Does anyone disagree with my reasoning on that? I mean, am I doing a really bad hermeneutic there?
I mean, I was digging around my Bible trying to find stuff. You make me pull up my Bible, Fred. It's not a bad thing, but
Good.
um, in First Corinthians 7, it talks about marriage, and it seems to refer to man and a woman in a singular sense in a marriage. Um, you are right that that is, I think, one of the only times that it specifically says, "Hey, only have one wife," which is really interesting. Um, but it also seems the Bible also seems to give like pretty clear pictures around two becoming one, as well as a man and a woman belonging to each other, um, and not to other people. And so I don't know. I would I would definitely veer on the side of one man and one woman, but you're right. It's not very overly specific.
No, and in fact, we have many of the fathers of the faith were polygamists. Um, Abraham was married to Sarah, right? But then had relations with her handmaid Hagar, which produced Ishmael. And then I think he learned his lesson on that one, and he just kept it to Sarah the rest of his life until she died. But then he took multiple other concubines or women and had more children and then sent them out. That, yeah, it's like the stories they don't teach you in Sunday school. But he had quite a few children after Sarah and gave them all little starter flocks and sent them out because he didn't want them to interfere with Isaac. That was getting the bulk of the inheritance. We certainly know the story of Jacob and Rachel and Leah, and then the two concubines that I believe got wife status eventually after they bore him sons. Um, what about God? Is God a polygamist? Who's the bride of Christ? We already talked about the church, right? Well, what about Israel? In the Old Testament, God refers to Israel as his bride. Now, if your theology believes that the church and Israel are the same, then you can stick with your monogamy. But if you believe the church and Israel are distinct, at least with this allegory or metaphor, God has two brides, the church and Israel. Fascinating. Or you could say it's okay, Blackburn, because God's a serial polygamist because he divorced Israel in the Old Testament and now he's married to the church. But we're told Israel will be saved, at least according to the Apostle Paul. So is he going to bring back the first wife and still keep the church wife? Anyway, just stuff I like to think about. But be thinking about that. What happened, and this is such a great mirror for us, because we just assume as American evangelical Christians or whatever, that what we're doing, our cultural norms and values, are those consistent with Scripture. But we have a lot of ideas, and marriage is a great example of that, where we have a particular way of thinking about it. And the Bible has a much broader understanding of marriage and human sexuality in some ways, even more so than American Christian culture. All right, so let me move onward a little bit. So we talked about different polygamy.
Just really quick, I would say that the Bible also gives like really clear examples as to why polygamy is not a good idea through all of the stories in the Old Testament, because there was a lot of drama and a lot of things that went on that could have potentially been avoided if polygamy was not a thing.
Sure, yeah. But we also wouldn't have got Jesus.
I think God's capable of working amidst our messiness. I don't think he needs to prescribe messiness to get his plan done. But yes, this is true. He did use polygamy to get Jesus around.
He did. Okay.